Gulf of Mexico, the wedding should go off without hitches. But until then, there's a big issue going on about net neutrality, which only a few of us understand in a transcendental way. But a man that can answer all questions about net neutrality is Brian Anderson, the editor of CJ and author of A Manifesto for Media Freedom. And Brian Anderson, welcome to the Bill Cunningham Show. Brian, how are you?
Good, Bill. Always glad to be on.
It's a great day to be an American. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Now, describe to my producer, Russ Jackson, who's not too bright when it comes to this stuff, what is net neutrality?
Well, it is indeed complicated, which is why most Americans just scratch their heads about it. But basically, it says to the people who provide the Internet to us, the broadband companies, the various other firms, that they have to treat every bit of information that comes across their cables, their fiber optics, their phone lines equally. So it's a kind of non-discrimination policy for the information that comes across the Internet.
Well, who's going to decide? This is the concern I have with your friends at the FCC. What government bureaucrat decides whether someone is using the Internet in a government-authorized fashion?
Well, this is why it's an extremely bad idea. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that needed fixing with the Internet. It's been one of the most exciting and open and freedom-enhancing media that you could imagine. It's generating economic health. So this move by the FCC is really a kind of power grab. So for the first time now, and this was a party line vote on the FCC, so in fact it was just 3 FCC commissioners, for the first time government will have a big role in how the Internet is going to be operated and managed.
Now let me guess something. Let me guess politically that the Democrats want to control and manage the Internet and the Republicans want freedom.
That's the exact breakdown. Yes.
What a surprise!
And this has been a big push by the Obama administration. In fact, a federal appeals court told them that the FCC had no authority to regulate the Internet last year, but they've gone ahead and done this anyway. So I do think it's going to wind up back in the courts, and it's going to be a big battle. But I'm very troubled by it because there's an economic problem. This kind of government meddling is going to really dry up investment in the Internet technologies of the future because the companies aren't going to know what's coming down the pike.
Why do you
the bigger problem, though, Bill, the scarier problem, is that this will lead to the kind of content regulations that we once used to see on the radio with things like the Fairness Doctrine. And we do know that the Obama administration, when it campaigned in 2008, argued that we should bring back the Fairness Doctrine for radio and television. So this now at least sets up the potential for the regulation of political websites in a way that I think should disturb every American.
You know, the Fairness Doctrine is called the Fairness Doctrine because it's unfair. The DREAM Act is called the DREAM Act because it's a nightmare. The Food Safety Program is called the Food Safety Program because it makes our food less safe. So when the government says they want to have simply rules and a bureaucracy to manage it, and when it comes to the FCC stuff relative to the Fairness Doctrine, they're going to use the Fairness Doctrine against conservatives and talk radio. They're not going to use it against the Today Show. They're not going to use it against CBS News. They're going to use it against Rush, Hannity, and pretty good regional talk show hosts like me to shut us up and intimidate us. But they're going to leave NBC, ABC, and CBS alone because they represent the viewpoints of the bureaucrats.
Well, as you know, the history, the Fairness Doctrine, when it was in place back in the 70s, 60s, made talk radio in today's sense impossible. So it does happen to be the case that conservatives have flourished in that particular medium, which may have been the reason that the Obama administration wants to get rid of it. But, it sounds far-fetched when you apply this idea to Internet sites. But it's worth noting that one of Obama's top advisors on regulatory issues, Cass Sunstein, a law professor, has in the past argued for a Fairness Doctrine for web opinion. In which every website would have to run counter opinions if it took a position on a particular political issue. Now, this is just crazy. It would require teams and teams of regulators monitoring the internet.
Yes,
what it would do is you would shut down all of the blogs.
Well, in my case, I started in radio at this radio station in 1983.
Right.
And now it's 2010, been here 27 years. When I started in September of 1983, we had a list of rules, which is don't talk about sex, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, don't talk about Republican or Democrat. And so what I did for 4 years, which was the medium in which I found myself, is we did legal advice, we did medical advice, we did petunias, we did car repairs. We stayed away from anything political as far as we could, not because we couldn't do it in a way that was fair and equal. The problem was, if you start talking about politics in 1984 with Ronald Reagan running against Fritz Mondale, for example, the other side, which in that case was the Democrats, because I tend to be a conservative, would file complaints against me and the station with the FCC, which would tie down lawyers and hearings for months and years to come. So the company could not afford to hire FCC-trained attorneys defending them in Washington at the cost of $500 an hour. And even though we would win the case after a year or two, by the time you spent $50,000 or $100,000, the radio company said, look, it's not worth it for us to contest these things, even though we normally win. So don't talk about politics. Stay out of controversies. You shouldn't do that. And so we did. I can recall doing hour after hour on chiropractic medicine, on urologic medicine, on gynecology. I'm a lawyer, legal advice, mechanics, how to fix things. And that was our job for the 4 years before the Fairness Doctrine was abrogated by Ronald Reagan. And then it changed in 1987, in which we became a water cooler. We became the place that people got together to talk. And there was flourishing liberals, conservatives, libertarians, atheists, religious people. On the radio dial right now, you can have conservative religious talk. You can have liberal talk show hosts all you want. You can have conservatives. Whatever you want to find, you can discover in radio today, because it is a multiplicity and diversity of ideas. And because this little slither of conservative talk on major AMs and FMs have proven successful in hurting Democrats, they want to impose the Fairness Doctrine on us specifically to shut us up, and they'll do the same thing to the Internet with the blog sites, and I don't know why more people aren't outraged.
Well, I think because it comes under neutral words like neutrality. It sounds benign, but it isn't. And again, let me repeat, there is nothing requiring fixing with the Internet that this FCC power grab could conceively use as a legitimation. It's a real problem, and I think it bears very close scrutiny in the months ahead. I'm hoping that the new Congress takes up this issue as some members have suggested they will. It's a very disturbing trend. I'm troubled.
How about this? The FCC rules are designed and intended to prevent potential harms to the American people because of opinions that are not fact-based. I'm thinking,
well, who's going to be deciding that? I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. You're going to have five people, commissioners making these kind of calls. The American people can decide that.
No, we can't.
Apparently not in the age of Obama.
No, we can't. In fact, when I go to the Drudge Report and I scroll down, and they have a long list of people with their websites and with their thoughts, I see quickly up here people like Dave Barry, Michael Barone, Brent Bozell, David Brooks, Pat Buchanan, Mona Sharon. But I also see Eleanor Clift is up here. David Korn is here. These are left-wing.
Right. It's democracy, and this is, the truth is that democracy threatens politicians, and so, some of them, especially on the left, I'm afraid to say, would really like to shut everybody up and basically allow the experts to rule, and that is the spirit of this FCC decision, which I do think will be challenged in the courts. And I do think we may see some action in the new Congress pushing back against this, because I just there's no argument for it it is a power grab. John Fund described it as a kind of coup in today's Wall Street Journal, and I think that's not such an exaggeration.
And wouldn't you feel the same way if talk radio was dominated by liberals and the mainstream media was dominated by conservatives? The American people deserve opinions from the far left to the far right, everything in between, things that are off the table. They need to hear from Nazis and from communists. They need to hear from Democrats and Republicans and libertarians. They need to hear from the Islamic world. They need to hear from the Buddhist and the Sikh world. They need to hear from Catholics. They need to hear a multiplicity of ideas and have the trust and faith in individual Americans to make the right decision.
That's exactly right, and that's one of the wonderful things about the Internet is that you can really see every imaginable opinion represented, stupid ones as well as brilliant ones. There's no excuse for Americans not to be extremely well-informed these days because it's all out there.
Well, the FCC says it might be dangerous for Americans to receive non-fact-based opinions.
Yeah, that should chill anybody, that kind of a statement.
Well, how can they say that? I mean, I don't understand it, really, Brian Anderson. I'm thinking to myself, this ought to be the biggest story in America. It ought to be the lead story on NBC, ABC, and CBS. They didn't cover this last night.
Well, it's Christmas week, and it's curious that the FCC decides to announce this during the week when fewer people are watching the news or listening to broadcasts than at any other time. But I have to say that the old media really benefit from a kind of regulatory regime that might make it more difficult for new media like the Internet or even talk radio in its contemporary sense to challenge their control over news and opinion. So it doesn't surprise me really that you wouldn't see this on CBS or NBC. They were never really covered in an aggressive way by fairness doctrine challenges. It was always aimed at sort of direct opinion shows, so like shows like your own, or talk radio in general, or cable news, which does tend to be more opinionated. These things are difficult under fairness doctrine regulations.
All right, Brian Anderson, editor of CJ and author of A Manifesto for Media Freedom. Do you have any questions for me?
No, but I think you're right to put an emphasis on this because not a lot of Americans are following this issue, and it's very complicated, but it has extraordinary implications for the way our media culture develops in the years ahead.
All right, Brian Anderson, Merry Christmas, and you're a great American.
Merry Christmas to you, too. Thanks a lot, Bill.
Whenever the government comes up with a catchy label phrase for something, it is generally just the opposite of what they say it is. So net neutrality is about not neutral issues. It's about cracking down on conservatives. The new food and safety bill was not about food safety. It was about empowering large firms and food processors to give more money to the Obama administration through lobbyists and earmarks than they had before. Nothing about food safety. If you're in a school district, if you're a dietitian in Edgewood or a dietitian at Simon Kenton, aren't you already kind of concerned about the health of the kids you serve food to every day? I mean, am I wrong? Am I missing something here? Does it take a federal department of bureaucracy in the USDA to tell you as a cafeteria worker or a dietitian in Madeira exactly what kind of food needs to be served? I mean, do they think you're that stupid? The answer, of course, is yes. So we're going to spend $7 billion a year now with a brand new bureaucracy in Washington to make sure that your own children are served healthy products by your own school district, as if those involved directly in that process really don't care whatsoever. So whenever something is called by the government, I can assure you it is exactly the opposite. It was hope calling something the DREAM Act would get it passed, but people saw that it was a nightmare, so it wasn't passed. So right now it's called net neutrality, when neutrality's got nothing to do with it. The FCC says what they want to do is to make the Internet more safe for the American people so that opinions are fact-based. Your comments, 513-749-7000. Jim and Amelia, the home of the Barons. And Jim, welcome to the Bill Cunningham Show. Jim, how are you?
Hey, Hey, how are you? I want to congratulate you guys and your family on the radio here for doing such a great job this year.
Thank you.
I mean, you guys went through some highs and lows, and you guys are still looking fine.
Well, Jim, it was hard this year for me to lose my wingman. It was hard, but things happened. He wanted to go to Chicago. Honestly, there was, according to news media accounts, a lot more money involved. And I hugged Mike and went out to lunch with him, and I understood it.
That's great.
And I said, go get him, brother. He's in the third biggest market in America, and little old Cincinnati's like 30. And so he wanted to go to a larger market, make more money. You know what I said, Mike?
More power to you.
I said, good luck, brother.
Yeah, you guys have got a good audience, and you're doing a good job. I just wanted to say about this internet thing real quick. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's somehow my paranoia. It reflects on the Patriot Act, to where they're sort of like having surveillance on certain websites. It's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you don't have to think that, Jim. You may be old enough to remember a time before the internet in which if you needed information about something, you had to wait till 6 o'clock until the news came on. You didn't trust what you were hearing there. And then you have to go to the library and get newspapers from around the country on those little poles and pull out a newspaper. And what access in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and a lot of the 90s, did you have in Amelia to facts and opinions from all over the world at your fingertips? It didn't happen.
Right. And I feel like, I'm being paranoid. Like me and my friends wanted to do a project for school, creative writing. It was an essay kind of thing. And we decided we wanted to do some research on making some brownies out of something I was supposed to make brownies out of, okay?
Yeah.
And we were all paranoid, the fact that we were going to go on these websites to learn how to make these certain brownies for, just for a research essay project. We were going to actually do it, but we all felt paranoid about getting this information like we were being watched. Does that make any sense?
Sure it does. You know why you have that feeling is because you are.
I'm paranoid?
No, you are being watched.
Yeah, I
you don't have to. The Patriot Act says, and for some circumstances, it's very good. They look for key words or key phrases in a certain conjunctive sense that will alert the authorities that you may be doing something relative to explosives or something seditious.
Right, and here's the thing that, I just wanted, I have these magazines that I do not subscribe to. I go down and pay cash for them because I'm paranoid to subscribe to them through credit card or whatever. But there are services in these magazines that actually guarantee that you will, you can roam the internet without fear of surveillance. I mean, this, to me, sounds like this is where it's coming to. I mean, am I wrong on that?
No, Jim, you're right. When the FCC tells Bill Cunningham in little Cincinnati, Ohio, that we're monitoring what you're saying and what you're doing. We're watching who your guests are.
Yeah, I'm not making bombs or anything. I'm just looking up.
You want to make brownies.
Exactly. And I feel like, you got these companies out there that are legitimate, that are actually security people that make sure that, there's an encryption to where the government cannot surveil your internet searches. And I think that's what it's come to.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this to you, Jim, that it is scary when a fat, bloated bureaucracy is going to be monitoring talk radio. They're going to be monitoring blog sites. They're going to be monitoring your computer. We live in the most exciting time in world history to get information through search engines at our fingertips. And the government wants to make sure that what you're doing is okay with them. Civil libertarians, liberals, conservatives, atheists, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, and Sikhs should be going crazy over this. But it's no big deal. We have become conditioned to accept government scrutiny in ways that in past would have been unthinkable. And it's happening now in your country. And it's happening at the hands, this time, of the Democrat Party. At another time, during the McCarthy era, there were parts of the Republican Party wanting to crack down on various issues of freedom. But today it's almost always the Democrats who are panicking because they've lost control of the message. They had the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune. They had ABC, NBC, and CBS. And they basically controlled what you saw, what you heard, and what you thought. And now it's different, and that's the problem.